Have you ever had an animal in your life, whether it's a dog or a cat or a guinea pig, where you felt like you just had a different connection with this animal than you've ever had with any other animals in your life? It's a deeper connection. It felt almost otherworldly. Pardon me. If so, then this was probably a soul pet. Hi, my name is K.A Bloch, and I am the award winning poet and author of 4 books that consist of poetry and prose. My channel is called The Practical Poet, and each week on my channel, I feature a different video poetry reading from one of my 4 books, or maybe even some new material. And this week, I am talking about a poem that is some new material written within the last year. And this is a poem that honors my late kitty, Chloe. This is a poem called The Chloe Connection. And last Friday marked the 1 year anniversary of Chloe's very sudden passing. And she was one of many cats that I've had and that I still have over the years. When I say still have, I have some that have crossed over and I have some that still live with me. And obviously, like I mentioned, Chloe did pass on very suddenly last year. I had a really strong and deep bond with her. I used to hold her like a baby, and I would kind of look at her eyes and she would look at my eyes, and she hated being held by a baby, but she would tolerate it for a little while. And I would just tell her, like, you were my child, or I was your child, in a different world and another life. But somehow we have a connection that goes beyond this current life. And shortly before Chloe died, a couple weeks before, and she had no signs of being ill or anything like that. She was 11, and she, used to lay next to me on my bed. When I would go to sleep, I would kind of reach over and I could hear her purr snoring. She was always so happy, and I would reach over and kind of grab her paw and just kind of hold her paw, and we would go to sleep. And one night, I had a dream that kind of rattled me. I live outside a small little pond over here to my side. And I've always had a big fascination with alligators. Whenever I go to Florida to visit friends there, I'm always on alligator watch from the time that they pick me up from the airport. I always want to see one in its natural habitat. And that's yet to happen for some reason. Everybody always sees them on the side of the road and stuff. I never, ever see one. So I have this bit of a fascination with wanting to see one in real life. And same thing with rattlesnakes. When I go to Arizona, it's kind of a weird thing, always from a distance. I don't want them to be super close. I don't want them to cross my path, but I'd love to see one just sunning itself on a rock in the desert. But again, doesn't seem to happen for me. But so one night I had this dream that in this little pond over here next to me, that's typically filled with geese and ducks, I looked over one day when I was working, and remember, this is a dream, and there was an alligator in the pond. And I remember thinking, oh, that's weird. And I went back to work in my dream. And a couple minutes later, I looked out the window again, and the pond was filled with alligators. Like, you couldn't even see the water hardly for all of the alligators. It was just like one after another after another. And I looked out the window and I saw Chloe in my dream on the back of an alligator. And she looked so happy. She had her head turned toward me. Her tail was up in the air. She had like a happy little grin on her face. And she was just enjoying just kind of hanging out on the back of this alligator. Well, in my dream, of course, because dreams are weird, I started to take off down the stairs to go rescue her. And I was wearing super high heeled shoes for some reason, and that slowed me down. And I never did reach her before I woke up. And when I woke up, my heart was racing, my breath was labored, like I had really been running. And it was just a very bizarre situation. And I reached over and I grabbed her paw. She was still there next to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're safe, you're safe, you're safe. For some reason, I thought about that dream the next couple of days. It really stuck with me. It was deeper and more vivid than any other dream that I had had recently. It really stuck with me. And specifically, the pose of Chloe on the back of the alligator's back really stuck with me. And it was about 3 weeks later that she passed away. She had, there's a formal name for it, I can't think of it. Basically, she had a kitty stroke, and she had a blood clot that broke away and it lodged itself into her front paw. And so when she came running into my office that morning, I thought that maybe she had just sprained or broken her leg or something like that. And I rushed her to the emergency vet, and they came in within 5 minutes and said she was in rapid heart failure. And so you can imagine if you've ever had to suddenly, or even not suddenly, even if you're planning to do it, putting an animal down or being with them in their final hours, it's one of the greatest things that we can do for the animal, but it's one of the hardest things that we can ever do for ourselves. It's so hard to say goodbye to a beloved pet. And I do think I was probably in a bit of a state of shock when I had to say goodbye to her. But nonetheless, I had to let her go, and we were devastated. My heart was broken. A couple of days after that, I think it was even the next day, I started seeing and hearing some weird things happening. Chloe had a very gravelly and kind of unique meow. And one time when the house was silent, there was no TV on or anything like that, I heard that meow from another room, and I turned and whipped my head around expecting to see her. And it was almost like just a weird moment. I heard that one time with my mom too. She's passed away, and one time I heard her say, very loudly my name in a quiet room, and it's kind of jarring but comforting at the same time. Um, there was other things that happened. Chloe she liked to lay under the cabinet underneath the sink, and she could find a way to get in. She could pry that cabinet door open with her paw and walk right in. Getting out was another situation for her. She, for some reason, couldn't get herself out of that cabinet. So we would hear thump, 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 thump. And then finally, like on the third attempt, she would manage to squeeze herself out of the door in between the thumps. And we would always laugh about that. Well, one night when I was getting ready for bed, I started to hear thump, thump, thump. And I walked into the kitchen, and it was dark in the kitchen, and the door had just opened. And I swear that I saw the shadow of an orange kitty walk out. And I have two other orange cats, and they were nowhere around. And I just said, that's interesting. Like, go to bed, Chloe. So there were some strange and odd occurrences that brought me some peace, and that made me feel like Chloe was still around and still in the house, to bring me some comfort. A couple weeks later, we were grilling out on a nice spring evening, looking at some cheese, or drinking some wine and eating some cheese. And my boyfriend had the iPad, and he was kind of scrolling through, and he was looking through Pet Finder, just seeing, the pets that needed a home. And I wasn't ready yet to entertain bringing on a kitty. But there was one, every now and then he would kind of flash the screen at me and go, look at this one, look at this cutie. And there was one in particular that he flashed to me, and I said, I've seen that pose before. And this was a little orange kitty. Her name was Calypso. And she looked really very, very similar to Chloe. The coloring was the same. The stance was the same from when I saw Chloe at the shelter when she was a little kitten. And now this little kitten was standing on a staircase, and her head was turned to the side, and her tail was up in the air. And she was looking over the camera. And I said, I've seen that stance before. I'm familiar with that stance. And then I remembered a few days later, it was the stance of Chloe on the back of the alligator in my dream. And I don't know if you can see it on here. I'll do my best to show it, but I have a little cameo of a kitty standing to its side with its tail in there and its head kind of turned. I got this in a little cameo shop. They make their own cameos when you're leaving Rome on your way into Pompeii area. And we stopped, I was with a tour group, and we stopped there. And as soon as I saw this cameo with the cat with its head turned to the side and its tail up in the air, I knew I had to grab it, because this stance is really what led us to our next kitty. I was kind of hoping that she had been adopted. Her name was Calypso, if I didn't mention that. And we made arrangements to go visit her. And I was only going to look. Right? We always say that. And when we got to the shelter, she had been in foster care, which is how they managed to get that picture of her on the staircase. So being in a shelter with a bunch of barking dogs and everything, she was quite terrified. And, my protective instincts kicked in as I scooped her up quickly. And I said, let's get this girl home. We felt like the name Calypso was a little bit big for her. It didn't really seem to fit her. And we thought, well, let's just keep it for a bit. We'll marinate on it, and we'll see if we can come up with a different name. The next day I happened to be at the grocery store, and I picked up a magazine, which I hardly ever do at the grocery counter. And I flipped right to a page about a dog named Clover that they were trying to, get the funds to fly him somewhere. He was in one of the distressed areas, and try to get him out of there. And I thought, well, that's a really cute name. And when I got home and I proposed that name for Calypso, we instantly were like, yeah, let's do it, because it kind of honors Chloe. It starts with CLO, which we always called her Chloe. And then we also learned that in Irish folklore, the name Clover stands for faith, hope, love, and luck, I believe, are the four things. And, what else can you rely on when you're trying to mend a broken heart, but all of those things. So her name was changed to Clover, and it really does seem to fit her. The odd thing about that was, I mentioned that she looked very much like Chloe, and they have the same coloring and everything. But within a couple of days, she started picking up some of the things that Chloe would do. Chloe would, when I was working, here's a picture of her. She would come in and she would lie on my desk, and she would just lay there with her paw kind of just hanging over the side, and she would take a nap, and she would sleep like that for a couple hours. One day when I was working, shortly after Clover came to us, she jumped up on my desk and she laid in that same pose, and she hung her paw over the edge. I'll post a picture of that. And in the background, you can see this picture of Chloe that I put on my desk in the background, and they are laying in exactly the same position. And, when we first started feeding Clover with the other kitties, everybody has their own designated eating spot, like their own personal seat at the table. And Clover came right up, and she just assumed Chloe's spot right at that same spot. I didn't cue her to do that. I didn't guide her there. She just jumped right up on that table. So there were so many similarities that it brought me a lot of comfort, but it was one of those things where I was just like, this is, very strange at the same time. So people were telling me when I was grieving Chloe and I was grieving her heart. Oh, speak of the little angel, here's Clover right here. Can you see her? Say hi, Clover. When I was grieving, everybody kept telling me to write a letter to Chloe or a poem, since I'm a poet, and to tell her how much, she meant to me and everything. And I wasn't ready to do that yet. I knew that I would be at some point, and I finally did. And then that's the poem that I'm going to read for you shortly, called The Chloe Connection. I'm going to go ahead and put my glasses on here because I want to show you also. I worked with a woman from Etsy. I think her name is Lady Humira, and she took the poem The Chloe Connection and she put their photos on here. So here's Chloe with her little halo on, and then here's Clover. The funny thing about this was Chloe's coloring here looks really washed out and subdued, and Clover is a little bit more prominent. So I think that's kind of interesting. In real life, they are really the same color. So it's interesting that Chloe was kind of taking a back seat, and Clover was coming a little bit more prominently. So do I think that Clover is like Chloe reincarnated? No, I don't think that. But I do think that, Chloe was guiding or is still guiding Clover in some way. Their mannerisms and things that they do are just too similar. And there's definitely a connection there. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into the reading of The Chloe Connection. It's a little bit longer. If you don't want to stick around for this poetry reading, you can check out the full-length version of the poem, the written copy, along with the full backstory. I go into a little bit more details about the connection between Chloe and Clover and some of the odd things that I witnessed and stuff like that. That's all available on my blog, and that blog is called The Practical Poet. So it's www.thepracticalpoet.com/blog, and then you would look for the poem, The Chloe Connection. So if you don't mind, I've been talking for a while. I want to take a quick sip of tea. We have a beautiful warm spring day here. We've had a lot of rain and dampness, so I have the windows open. It's a nice day, but still, good cup of afternoon tea always tastes good. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into the video poetry reading of The Chloe Connection. I thought that when your heart stopped beating, mine would shut down too. For how could I keep breathing while I said goodbye to you? My heart was breaking, my mind was numb, and my body a physical ache. This isn't right. You can't be gone. This must be some mistake. But I began to see signs of you, even though still bereft. These little signs filled me with hope as I realized you never left. Then you gave me the greatest gift when you sent her my way. She filled the void that you created because you could not stay. I saw so many of signs of you within her, so many similar traits. It really made me wonder about life and pay homage to the fates. She looked like you, she felt like you, yet she was her own being. There were times I would just ponder and stare and marvel at what I was seeing. I knew she was a gift from you, a gift I would honor and treasure. I slowly let the healing begin and allowed myself to feel pleasure. Sometimes I would sit back and relax and watch her play for a while. And despite the lump that grew in my throat, I couldn't deny the smile. That smile would grow until it reached my eyes and my heart began to lift. I knew this was your intention and your purpose with this gift. There are so many things we don't know. Much of life is a mystery. I believe there are forces at work, even though we cannot see. I believe our loved ones are with us. I believe in angels and guides. I believe that hope can exist in our hearts, even if pain still resides. I am sure there are forces to steer us, always working behind the scenes, even if we can't always feel it or don't understand what it means. I know I will never forget you, even as time marches on. I feel our souls are connected, as evidenced by our strong bond. I know that one day we'll meet again, but for now, until that day, I'll treasure, protect, and honor the gift you set my way. I know that love never leaves us. The bond we share never dies. The love that we have for each other lives on and only intensifies. You've shown me that love caresses the soul, and that same love, the heart it warms. You've proven to me that love never dies. It merely just transforms. So that was the video poetry reading of the Chloe connection. And of course, that was to honor Chloe and the gift of clover that I do believe that she sent our way. There's a little bit of a spiritual element to this poem that talks about, there's many things that we don't know, that there's a lot of mystery around there, and that there's forces at work that we can't always see, and things happen in our lives and we don't always know what it means. And I believe that was the case with my dream. Somehow, some way, somebody or something, a force that I don't understand, put that dream in my head that night and made sure I didn't forget it. That pose of Chloe standing on the back of the alligator is the pose that led me to recognize the same stance in clover. I drew a connection between the two. I knew that there's familiarity there. And when I saw that pose in clover, who was Calypso at the time, standing on the stair, it drew me right back to that dream where Chloe was on the back of the alligator. And I knew that that wasn't just an ordinary dream, that somehow I was meant to remember that dream. I was meant to remember that pose, that stance on the back of the alligator, so that when I saw Chloe's picture online, and she was just one of hundreds of orange cats that day that I was being shown, or maybe not hundreds, but lots of orange cats that I was looking at, and that one made me stop and made me say, there's something about this cat that's familiar, not just the coloring, not just the face. But it was her stance, and I do believe that there were those forces at work that connected everything together. So we don't always understand. Maybe we shouldn't question, and just go with it and just enjoy the gift that Chloe sent our way, while we're also honoring the memory of her every day. We talk to her, we talk about her. Same with all of our cats. I mean, all of our ones that have passed on, we still keep them very much alive in our memory. And I think that's, the greatest thing that we can do. And, I always like to say that, animals are a gift from heaven, and we only borrow them for a little bit and we have to give them back. And I had to give Chloe back, but in return, the universe or the fates or somehow we were given this gift of clover, and I will always treasure her. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and leave you. I hope that you enjoyed this video poetry reading of the Chloe connection. You can find it again on my blog at thepracticalpoet.com/blog. And if you like this video poetry reading, I hope that you will like and subscribe. And when I do another video poetry reading, you will be notified. And I hope that it is a beautiful day in your neck of the woods as it is in mine. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day or week or evening, wherever it is where you are, and we'll chat soon. Thanks so much. Bye.